Chapter 31. Familial Connection. What do you mean you can't find anybody? Surely there's some schmuck in Night City who needs a Merc? Ori questions Judy over the holo call. Judy shrugs her shoulders. There are. Just none who want you dash, or at least, not you alone. You'd have to convince your friends to take the jobs with you. She states, referring to Max and Six. That was unlikely to happen. Any jobs Ori would get offered paled in comparison to those Max and Six had available to them via their own contacts. He was just lucky they occasionally included him, though. It made him feel like the unwanted cousin sometimes. I'm actually impressed how well you've done so far. Judy adds, solos either have a foundation in corpo security, military, or NCPD work. You? Just some kid with a gonk iron. Sounds like you're trying to jinx me. Ori retorts, hiding his embarrassment at her praise. I'll keep looking around but dash. She's interrupted as Bats approaches where Ori's sitting. Kid, stop talking to your girlfriend for a minute. You're gonna want to take a look at this. I found something. The Ripperdoc hurriedly says. Ha, girlfriend? She incredulously questions aloud. What else would you be? You're the only girl my nephew speaks to on a daily basis, plus you're not a bad looker either. I'm not complaining or anything. Bats tacks on, trying not to intrude and failing horribly. Should I be hurt that you're so offended? Ori asks Judy with mock hurt on his face. She purses her lips at him. Newsflash, you're lacking some things I'd want in a partner, along with that gross thing between your legs. He smirks. I don't get you lesbian types. You hate men but use fake cocks. Where's the logic in that? This is not up for discussion, she sharply retorts. I'll talk to you later, Ori. And let that old man know his laptop's beat-up heatsink is about to kaput, she states before ending the call. Ori looks over at Bats, who just had a hardware error notification pop up on his screen. Huh, how'd she know that? Probably spotted the make of it. I got this on the cheap because of that issue dash. Bats pauses and shakes his head at the tangent. Forget that, look. He pulls up a website selling various items and zooms in on a particular one. Karoshi MK.2s. Like dads. Ori mutters with widening eyes. They his? Bats nods with surety. Definitely. Equipped with the same modifications I installed. Threat analysis on the left, with trajectory analysis on the right. There ain't a doubt in my mind that this is them. Chances of another set having the exact same mods? Ori questions despite believing Bats. To have the exact same make modifications on the exact same sides on the exact same kind of Karoshis? Like free Fallon out of space too, and landing in the same pile of dogs hit. Can you track him? Bats shakes his head. No need. They're being auctioned off in 2 days down in Japantown. Ori sits up from the couch, ignoring the slight ache of his body, still somewhat sore from the modification the nanites had made to him. All right, tell me where it's at, and I'll have a look, he says while standing, grabbing the Rostovic DB-4 Igla and slinging it over his shoulder while holstering his new Constitutional Arms Unity pistol. Bat stands with him. I'm coming too. Fuck no you ain't. Don't you remember what happened last time we went somewhere together? Last 2 times in fact. Ori instantly rejects him. This is just as personal for me as it is for you. I'm coming, whether or not it's with you or on my own is your choice. Bats argues. Fuck your feelings, your vendetta, or whatever won't mean shit if you get shot in the face. Don't make me tie to the couch. How's that any different for you, kid? You think I'm cool just twiddling my thumbs while you put yourself in danger? I can bear with it if it's Merc shit, but for something like this that involves us both? I'm coming, full stop. Fine, but you do as I say. Ori finally relents after a small staring contest. He stomps into his room and retrieves small sack, the emergy panic bag as he'd called it, for Bats to use should someone try to actually break in. To honest, he might have gone overboard when filling it. He thinks to himself as he turns upside down and allows the grenades, stims, throwaway holophones, and concealed weapons to drop onto the bed. Take the pistols and ammo. Leave everything else. Last thing we need is to blow up part of Japantown. We don't need Tiger Claw attention on us. Ori steps out from his car with Bats, while surveying the city around him. Japantown was far, far better off than Kabuki, Little China, and definitely North Side. He wasn't actually sure of the reason for this. Maybe its vicinity with the corporate plaza in the city center and North Oak had something to do with it. Rich folk don't like having to look at poor folk. He could only catch glimpses of the other reason. Near street corners, alleyways, and some businesses the Tiger Claws made their presence known. Their iconic dressing style, weaponry, and vehicles all but declared Japantown as their turf. Since rumor was the Tigers were directly under Arasaka, it made sense they'd be allowed to operate so brazenly so close to the Corpo Plaza. Fucking Corp had him all on payroll. Naniomi Teruno? A female tiger wearing basically nothing with a katana at her waist growls at him, noticing his glare. The translation software Bats had hooked up with translated it rather quickly. What the fuck are you looking at? Come on. We ain't got time for this, remember? Bats states, gesturing for him to follow to prevent them from getting into any fights. They were lucky Ori left his shotgun in the trunk, Otherwise, the tigers might have had a reason to start shit with them. So Omata Noda, Kono Yero, that's what I thought, little bastard. The woman sniffs derisively as they walk away. Chapter 32, Showcase. God, I fucking hate this place. How are the Japs more stuck up than the slap-your-face Chinese? Ori angrily mutters as they walk through the awkwardly structured Japantown markets. In certain areas, they just got completely cussed out for either not wearing the traditional clothing or for not being Asian. In Kabuki or Little China, this wasn't a problem, mainly due to how poor everyone was, everyone suffering together, and all that. But still the point stood. If Bats hadn't given him the translation software, he wouldn't even be able to read anything. Not the street signs, not the advertisement billboards, not the shop names. Everything was in Japanese, as if the place was a giant embassy for that country. You seem to say that about a lot of places. Just ignore it and carry on. We're almost there anyway. Bats simply says, deciding not to argue with Ori on this. He agreed with the sentiment, but voicing it out in the middle of the street was kind of dumb. Eventually, they make it to the shop where the auction was supposedly being held. The entrance was around 3 stories up along a mall-like area, structured with random escalators and even more random pathways. How was a dingy back alley filled with shit and stolen vehicle parts a valid route to reach places anyway? Hey, handsome, why don't you take me somewhere I can pop your cherry? Some random Japanese joy-toy woman says, stepping forwards towards Ori while licking her lips. He gives her an utter look of disgust that almost shocks her into complete silence. Kids his age weren't usually so restrained. The only cherry you're popping is a hemorrhoid. Piss off. He spits at her, causing her eyes to widen before she hurriedly walks off, cursing under her breath as she does so. Bats lets out a spluttered cough at that and quickly drags Ori away before her pimp decides to try to kick his ass. Seriously, we're in enemy turf here. Calm the fuck down, he curtly says. Whatever, we're here now. Ori retorts, gesturing at the place. Junko's Spar and Nail Salon. Creative, he drawls, as if this wasn't the most obvious laundering scheme in existence. It wasn't helped either by the Tiger Claw gangers acting as security in and around the place. They approach and the tigers immediately block their path, glaring at them with suspicion. Neither of you seem the type for a pedicure. A guy wearing a tight black and red leather bodysuit states with folded arms. Ori nods, yeah, we're here for the auction. Ain't startin' for 2 days, but I was under the impression we could have a look at what we're buying first. Auction EY? Then you've got the eddies to pay the entry fee. Ori crooks a brow. Entry fee? Sounds like you're skimming some cash off the top before the owner can even see it. He know about your operation here? The man huffs at him with a smirk. She. And yes, she supports the tigers. Didn't answer my question, Dash. Ori, just leave it. We ain't got time for this. Bats urges. Fine. Ori mutters before digitally sending the guy 500 eddies. Not much for the usual baller who'd attend the auction, but a painful amount for Ori who valued every penny. He was well aware this was a just scheme though. They didn't care about entry fees or anything. They actually just wanted some sort of contact in case Ori tried something. They'd be able to trace him via the transfer. He'd need to ask Bats about some software to get around that in future. It was a huge weakness in his security. Enjoy your stay, the man smirks, stepping to the side and letting the duo pass. Whatever. The salon itself was basically empty aside from a few Tiger Claw girls who basically got the treatments for free. A woman in the store's uniform approaches them and leads them through the store and through a hallway, seemingly connected to a large storage room that had been heavily modified. Colorful lights, nice seating, all placed around a central dais that the auctioneer would presumably stand on. Hollow emitters were placed strategically around and would display the items once the auction began. Around the outskirts of the room, however, were the items in question being sold, all set up in glass casing, security cameras hovering virtually everyone. Ori was certain he'd be instantly caught if he tried anything. You'd need a crazy good netrunner to get anything done at all. Actually, the sheer amount of security might have given the NCPD precinct a run for its money, and that was saying something. There, Bats states, pointing over to a glass case which had a hologram hovering over it showing its specs. MK.2 Karoshi optics. Ori just numbly walks over and stares down at the eyes, a shiver creeping up his spine as he stares into them. They were Dad's all right. He remembered being frozen under them when he'd stolen a bag of food from some beggars, thinking that they were dead instead of asleep. He unconsciously touches the glass case, but freezes as a notification pops up in front of him. Do not touch. He snatches his hands back and sheepishly glances at the nearby camera, which had a flashing red light on it as it tracked his face. Thankfully, his software wouldn't obscure his face from the device itself, but merely corrupt the recording it made. He gives an awkward smile and raises his hands, as if surrendering at gunpoint. The red light switches off, determining him as not a threat. Can I help either of you gents? An authoritative voice questions as it approaches Ori and Bats from behind. They turn and find themselves face to face with a portly Asian man wearing a suit too fine for his figure. Judging by the almost comical-looking monocle flashing with holographic information, Ori surmised him to be the auctioneer, if not the owner himself. I don't think so. We're just taking a look around.
Bats offers.
Actually, I was wondering if you could tell us where you got these? Ori asks, gesturing to the eyes. I have some things to discuss with the supplier. The man purses his lips. I think not. All of our sellers' identities are strictly confidential, for obvious reasons. The man explains. Chapter 33. Respectfully. The man purses his lips as if he'd made an error. My apologies. But may I ask who you both are? I am Ajino Jun, the manager and auctioneer of this establishment. He greets with a slight bow at his hip.
Oi.
Really though I need to speak with the supplier. Ori pauses. I could make it worth your while. You scratch my back, I scratch yours, kinda deal, he offers. The manager stares at him unblinkingly for a couple moments before eventually nodding with a slight smile. I believe we can work something out. Allow me to retrieve the owner so we can properly make things official. Is that okay with either of you? Ori nods despite Bat's reluctance. The Ripperdoc was getting a real bad feeling about all of this. He airs his thoughts when the manager walks away, stepping into a back room and disappearing from sight. Ori, I think we should dip. Now. Why? We're close to finding that cunt Marv. Bats eyes the security around them. I really doubt someone in charge of a place like this would risk ruining their reputation. We'd have to pay 10 times the amount we currently have in total at the very least. You got any other ideas then? Because other than this I can't think of any. Ori questions unsurely after taking a breath to calm himself. He'd been on the warpath ever since Bats had told him about the eyes. He could still feel his blood boiling even now. I don't know, but staying here ain't helping anybody. Let's go, he urges. Ori reluctantly nods, spotting some of the cameras around the room turning to face their position. You're right. Come on, he says, making quick steps towards the exit. They manage to walk out of the main auction room and reach the salon shop front, but as soon as they move to the door, the salon assistant calls for them. Could you please remain where you are? Our manager has requested that you stay within the premises. Ori waves non-committally over his shoulder. Sorry, but we're in a rush. Our Dash cousin, he's just fallen down the stairs and got the flu dash, you see. Ori opens the door, only to come face to face with the Tiger Claw gang members, all standing around the entrance staring at him and Bats. Excuse me, friend, the man from earlier starts, but you seem to have been called back. I suggest you listen. Ori holds up his hands placatingly. My cousin needs us. It's really important. He's disabled and we don't have insurance. Is that so? It's too bad he'll be left waiting then. Go back inside. The man growls, a section under his wrist opening up and allowing a long blade to slide out of it, like something from that old Assassin's Creed game or whatever. Ori lets out a grudging sigh. I see. He glances over the group to find a spot where he and Bats could flee through, but it quickly becomes apparent that they weren't escaping like this. Even if he could, Bats definitely wouldn't be able to outrun them. I guess we'll have to complete our appointment then. He relents, allowing himself and Bats to be led through the shop again. They're sat down in an ornately decorated office. Their shitty plastic chairs sat in front of what would be a throne in comparison. I see we've found our wayward guests, an accented female voice states as she walks out from one of the side doors, daintily sitting opposite them before pulling out a nail file and casually attending to her digits. The Tiger Claw members standing on either side of Ori and Bats stiffen at her approach, meaning she was either stupidly dangerous or had enough backing to scare them into submission. I wouldn't say wayward. It was an open showcase. I wasn't aware we couldn't leave. Ori politely yet stiffly responds. The woman eyes him. Were you not the ones who asked for me? As you may know, I am the only one with information on our suppliers. It is quite disrespectful to call on me then immediately try to leave. I do not know where you are from, but here, we take disrespect very seriously, she tersely states. As I said earlier, it was a family emergency. She hums uncaringly. Whatever it is, it can wait. She crosses her legs. I am Siki Yori, but you can refer to me as Siki-sama. She gestures at them with the nail file. Ori and?
Iya Bats. Saki-sama.
The girl snorts at the name. You are either using fake names, or you are too insignificant to be on any meaningful database. Judging by your clothing, I suspect the latter. Now, what are two Eddie-less nobodies doing in my establishment? Offering to bribe my people and warp our reputation. Ori sends a glance at Bats who returns it, clearly very nervous. I needed to get in contact with the supplier of those MK.2 Karoshis. This was the only avenue I had. I only need to talk with them dash. Her eyes flicker with light momentarily as he adds the last part, scowling in irritation. All truth until that last fabrication. Do not lie to me, child. She all but growls. Some sort of lie detection cyberware? Ori mentally comments. He hadn't heard of anything like that, but it was probably possible. He knew how those old lie detectors in cop and detective flicks worked. So, collective, stabilize my heart rate, sweat, and anything related to lying, he mentally orders, feeling the adrenaline pumping through him due to the situation fade. He lets out a sigh and focuses on the woman. I want to give them a piece of my mind. I sold them those karoshis for a fraction of the cost they're being displayed for. To be frank, Siki-sama, I'm pissed that I got ripped off. Ori could hear Bat's breath hitch beside him, but it wasn't anything loud enough for the others to hear. Hopefully he was right about the woman's cyberware. At his response, she leans back in his chair with a hum. Is that so? I had hoped for more, something interesting, but it turns out just to be an angry child with his minder. Do you even have enough eddies to bribe my man? Ori shakes his head. No. But I could scramble some together, do some work dash. He allows himself to trail off, melding his personality to what the woman was perceiving him as. It wasn't all that difficult considering most of her assumptions were true. She sighs, you two will stay away from this area. I have no interest in punishing children for their impudence, but there is only so much I will take. She looks to the tiger claws, throw them out. Chapter 34, Truth or Dare. Oof. Ori and Bats groan as they're physically thrown from the store, the tiger claws chuckling at their misfortune. The duo don't dawdle either, quickly departing and heading back to the car. Once there they release long sighs of relief at getting out of that situation in one piece. Well, that was a bust. Ori mutters, rubbing his eyes. You think? Bats retorts. I don't even want to think about how close we were to getting zeroed. That was the mob, Ori. Serious tiger claw shit. We got dragged in front of their leadership, interrogated, and still somehow made it out alive. I'm still fucking shaking. He raises his hand, showing it visibly trembling. You're the one that wanted to come. You should have expected something like this. He shakes his head. Now we've got to think of another plan. They know our faces now too. Ori, we almost got caught. We should head back, take a break, and think about this more dash. What? You're losing your nerve already? Ori questions with a raised brow. There's being brave, then there's being foolish. Neither of us has any skills that can help us here. We need outside help. Bat states. Ori nods. Yeah, I was thinking a netrunner, but how much is it to hire one anyway? Too much, especially if we ask him to risk themselves against the tigers. To even hire one we'd need to go someplace high up, like the afterlife or something. Afterlife? You mean that afterlife? Ori asks. There probably wasn't a single soul in Night City who didn't know at least the name of it. It was a goal, a point that most mercs could confidently call themselves pros if they reached it. That was the big leagues, and not something he or Bats could easily reach. It was Ori's goal too, as it happens. All the money they were saving up was meant for that, to hire someone in the afterlife to find Cat. Specifically, he wanted Rogue, the owner of the place, who was apparently the best fixer you could buy. Obviously, such a thing wouldn't come cheap. He'd asked Max and he'd laughed at the difficulty of the task. They wanted a fixer to find a girl called Cat who may or may not have been kidnapped by one of 3 gangs, may or may not be alive, and could be literally anywhere in Night City, with no names, locations, or anything else to help find her. Now, if they needed to hire a netrunner, they'd be eating into their funds. Was Marv even worth that? The auction was their only lead to find him, but if that put them behind schedule in finding Cat, was revenge worth the delay? The risk? Deep in his thoughts, Ori almost completely ignored the familiar chime of an incoming holocall. His eyes widen, however, when he notices the name. Incoming call, Quentin Fabrosi. What would he be calling for? Maybe a job? Shaking his head, he answers it and looks at the holographic image appearing from his holophone, instantly pausing at the sight. Quentin had been tied to a chair in some well-decorated apartment, the camera only revealing him and nothing that could indicate his location or his captor.
Hashi, oi.
I need your help. The young corpo asks with clear desperation. Bats beside Ori stares at the screen in bafflement, forcing Ori to put a hand over his mouth to keep him quiet. Whatever this, whoever was responsible probably didn't want it made public to outsiders. Quentin, what the fuck is this? I need someone to vouch for me. You know, because of a week ago. The thing. He stutters out, his swollen lips and bruised face making it difficult for him to speak. Ori quirks a brow. What thing? You need to be specific, he states, not wanting to incriminate himself without Quentin doing so first. Quentin's eyes glance at whoever was behind the camera. Vouch for me, killing my dad. Why you were there? You can vouch for me, right? Why would you need someone to vouch for that? Ori questions. This shit is pretty you trying to put it on me or something? He angrily asks. And no. The person holding in me?
Ainti corpo.
They were targeting my dad. Think I'm in charge now? All right, that's enough. A distorted yet feminine voice states, turning the camera around to face her, revealing a black, pixelated silhouette which obviously had software obscuring her identity. If you want your buddy alive, you'll come to the drive-in theater in North Oak. You've got 10 minutes. 10 minutes? I'm at the bottom of Japantown, I know. Better hurry. Ciao, she says, the scenery around her fading away to reveal pitch-black darkness, indicating that the apartment had been for display purposes only.
Beep beep.
Call ended.
Fuck.
Ori growls, pocketing his holophone and starting the car. Get out, Bats. This ain't something you want to be involved in, he states as he revs the engine. You're gonna go off into another ambush? I'm already here, so let's just dash. Bats starts but flops onto the sidewalk as Ori punts him out. I'll see you back at the apartment. We'll talk about our options there, he says before driving off with a trail of dust and smoke behind him. Bats awkwardly gets up, brushes himself off and rubs the back of his neck as he watches him leave into the distance. That kid? Ori zoomed through traffic in his crappy little Thornton G240 hatchback, swerving past cars and clearing multiple red lights. He'd almost crashed multiple times, but he didn't slow, knowing he was on a time limit. Was there a reason he was so desperate to get to Quentin? No, not one he could pick out, but overall he felt like it was the right thing to do, even if it was just for the eddies the guy'd probably pay him. Thankfully, it wasn't strange to see a stupidly dangerous driver in Night City. Since this was Tiger Claw turf, the NCPD barely had any presence at all. Their headquarters was based in Little China, so even if they wanted to catch him, they'd be hard-pressed to do so before he vanished. He pulls a hard turn into the large roundabout and barely pulls the ass of the car in as he accelerates down the thin side road that winded around North Oak. By the time he reached the drive-in theater, one of his car's tires had gotten slashed by some scrap. Its engine was chugging hard, and it was even running low on CHOH2, the synthetic alcohol that served as fuel nowadays. He steps out of the car, slings his shotgun over his shoulder, and begins stomping up the hill to the drive-in, all the while grumbling curses under his breath.
Chapter 35. Lights, camera, action.
The Silver Pixel Cloud drive-in itself was obviously deserted. The place was only really operable in the late afternoons when the sun had set, as the movie projector couldn't display anything when it was too bright. The place itself was rather small, a relatively thin building built amongst the desperately cultivated grass and trees of North Oak. One of the two garage doors that served as entrances were open. Whoever had Quentin was waiting for him. All right, let's spring this trap then, I guess, he mutters himself, shotgun at the ready as he steps through. He comes out into the movie area. No cars were present, but he spotted Quentin, tied to a chair directly under the projector screen. Obvious, Ori remarks aloud as he slowly walks towards the hostage, focusing on every nook and cranny to find where the ambush would be coming from. He removes Quentin's gag when he suddenly shouts, Ori. Ori promptly turns but gets blinded as the projector abruptly turns on, its light focused into a beam that seemed to aim directly for his face. His ears twitched as he heard someone sprinting towards him. Request permiss. He mentally accepts and his pupils quickly shrink into pinpricks, allowing him to see the silhouette rapidly running at him. He aims the shotgun at them and is about to fire when his vision starts heavily flickering, disorienting him.
Bang!
He fires off a shot anyway, but clearly misses as he feels something wrap around his gun and snatches it away. A dainty foot then smashes him in the side of his head, causing him to stumble a few steps to the side. He weathers a couple more attacks on his quickly bruising arms and throws a random kick out, causing the woman to dodge back into a couple of back handsprings. Interface breached. Request permission to disconnect interface from host brain. Flesh administrator. The bots chirp in his mind. He accepts once again, blinking his eyes awkwardly as he feels the tech get deactivated. Hey, what? The woman who'd attacked him shouts in surprise, never before encountering what Ori had done. Sure, defense systems were abundant, but completely disconnecting the cyberware in your head? That would require a ripperdoc and weeks of prep, not to mention the recovery period. Can't hack shit if there's no tech? Ori shouts as he draws his pistol, but again, something snakes around it and steals it from his grip as he lets out an irritated growl. Finally, though, he could get a good look at the person responsible. An Asian woman wearing a full black bodysuit under a short pink jacket. She had short black hair cut into a stylized bowl cut and blue/purple eyes which were squinted in concentration. The two black lines on either side of her face alongside her confused pout almost made her look like Cat, if he were honest. The wire gripping his pistol retracts into her palm, allowing her to grip it and point it at Ori's head. I don't know what you did, but unless you've got something else up your sleeve you better surrender, she exclaims, her voice tinged with a Russian accent.
Bang!
She fires at his feet, hitting a rock dead center and shattering it. I mean it, put your hands up. Ori reluctantly does so. What are you doing with Quentin anyway? He said he needed me to vouch for him. Well, here I am. Let's get down to biz, he states, trying to hide the nerves in his voice. He'd been beaten so easily that it was kind of embarrassing. Why don't you take a seat next to him first, friend? The woman says, making a shooing gesture with the gun. Ori kneels on the floor next to Quentin, still with no idea what was happening. You wanted his father, right? Well, this guy killed him, so whatever you're after is pointless. The girl huffs at him, humph, like he's any different from the other corpos. You're a merc who answered his call. You must have worked for his dad then, yes? Ori shakes his head. No. As I said, we helped Quentin kill him. Asshole deserved it anyway. You're lying, she states matter-of-factly. I ain't. She folds an arm under another, her nails extending into metallic claws. You should speak before I make you, she growls at him. I already told you what I know. I'm here to vouch for him, that he did what he says he did. What do I need to do for you to accept that as fact? Or are you going to torture us for shit we may not even know? Her claws retract as she angrily kicks at the floor, uplifting dust as she irritatedly runs a hand through her hair. This is so dumb. She points a finger at Quentin. He knows nothing and I run into the only merc in Night City who can turn his tech off. This is so unfair. Wait, were you going to hack my tech and search my shit? Ori questions as she paces back and forth in annoyance. Duh. If he knew nothing, then maybe the merc who worked with his daddy would. But you, ugh, she complains, as if she hadn't been threatening to torture and shoot him in the face a moment ago. Even if you can access my shit, I wouldn't know anything. I only know his dad through a fixer who'd had I cut off to show to him. He gestures at Quentin. A couple hours later, Pops had a hole in his face. What could you want from him anyway? He was chump change in the corpo world from what I know. Ori pauses. Unless your interest is in where he worked. Biotechnica? She scowls at him. Whatever, everything's ruined now. All my planning and research and contacts and eddies, all down the toilet. She lets out a sigh and points the gun at Quentin. Let's just get this over with, Dash. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Quentin exclaims with snot and tears dripping down his face. Hang on. Why don't we make a deal then, huh? This is way better than whatever you planned originally. Have Quentin be your man on the inside in Biotechnica. She snorts at him. Puffed. Like that would work. He'd go crying to the execs as soon as he could dash. Not if you had proof that he killed Cleveland Fabrosi. You could use it against him if he tried to go against you. Ori argues, not wanting to see if he could survive a bullet to the brain.